How's it going, guys? So I figured it was about time I did some haul videos. I'm starting with the graphic novel haul. I have a handful of trades that I picked up these last couple months. First up, this isn't really a trade, it's more of a European album. That is the Druids Path. It is by Silly Books, and it is written and drawn by Fer Jimenez and Miguel Rodriguez. I think this is their first try at a graphic novel or a comic book. They are both Spanish creators, and pretty much, as the title says, the Druid's Path is about a druid going on his journey, a path, and we see it from 2 points of view. We see it from the beginning of the journey, and we're seeing it at the same time towards the journey's end. So you get a time skip, you get him as a younger man, and you get him much older. So that was pretty interesting. I was looking for a translator on the book, and I couldn't find any, which led me to believe they did their own dialogue and translation, or just dialogue, I guess, because as you read the story, it seems the dialogue seems written from a Spanish perspective. Sometimes they'll say, instead of just saying Mother Earth, they'll say the Mother Earth, and then you get into all that of los, las, el, and so on and so forth that you use in Spanish. Other than that, it was pretty good. The art wasn't bad. It was pretty interesting. The story jumps here and there a bit, kind of choppy a bit, but for the most part, you could follow what's going on very easily. Now I move on to the actual trades. I have Aliens Dust to Dust by Gabriel Hardman, and I believe Brain Barreto did the colors, which I thought the art in the beginning was pretty good, but it does get kind of dark at times, and Dust to Dust to me felt kind of a bit lackluster. It uses a lot of story elements that have been used before. We're following this kid who right from the beginning loses his mom through the alien invasion of their colony, much like the young girl in Aliens. But in the end, you realize it's not really just himself. He ends up with a group of people, and by the end, they're not gonna survive other than the kid. So the element of horror was kind of lost. The storytelling was kind of here and there. It wasn't bad, but compared to, say, Aliens Dead Orbit, it just didn't feel original. And even if you compare it to, say, Aliens versus Dread versus Predator, I mean, Moonaghan's art was much better than that. Even if the story wasn't as interesting, you get all the other characters, which makes it a lot better than just aliens and a colony and stuff you've seen before. I move on to another horror title. This was a much better read for the most part. That was Annika, book 1. It is by the Smallwoods, Greg Smallwood, and I think his sister helped him out. I think it's his sister, Meg Smallwood. And what can I say? Smallwood does a great job with the art. Even though there's sometimes very little story, the characters look amazing. The expressions on the character's face, especially on Veronica, is always great. And the panel layouts are pretty nice. Sadly, by the 3rd chapter or issue, it ends because we get what's his name filling in, Matt Horn. No, not Matt Horn, Greg Scott. Matt Horn does the colors for Greg Scott, sorry. And even though Scott tries to imitate the style that Smallwood does, It's just not the same, even the panel layouts. So it did feel kind of rushed at the end. It does sort of end, but it leaves it open to other stuff, I guess, to maybe a book 2. But if Greg Smallwood doesn't come back, it's kind of... And it has this extra chapter of Jughead the Hunger, which I'm not sure why they threw it in, maybe just to fill in some more stuff. Just for the first 3 issues that Greg Smallwood wrote and drew himself, it was a great read. The only thing I think that could have saved the book, for me at least, is if Smallwood would have done breakdowns or something for Scott. Probably would have meshed better with the first 3 issues, but it's still, like I said, 3 issues, very cool stuff. Moving on to the Image books, I think most of the bulk of the haul is Image. I'm starting off with the Ice Cream Man, or Ice Cream Man. This is the first volume. I remember picking up the first issue, and that thing was just bizarre, crazy, very cool stuff. Written by Maxwell Prince, art by Martin Morazzo, and the art is pretty nice. Like I said, the first issue was great. It basically goes downhill after that first issue. I don't know why it just didn't feel as strong. Rainbow Sprinkles, it's a story about 2 drug addicts, and I just didn't really care for the story. You know, there's always some weird twists to the tales. They just didn't have that impact as the first issue. Even what was it, plain or good old-fashioned vanilla. This was about basically characters from songs. I mean, the only one I could remember was Rocket Man, right? So you got this one-hit wonder guy who has to save the world by creating a new song, but since he's a one-hit wonder, how's he gonna do it? I don't know, they all just fell flat compared to the first issue. Am I gonna get the second volume? Maybe. I've heard a lot of good things about the second volume. I think Ice Cream Man just wasn't for me. More supernatural stuff. This is a Bitterroot by Walker, Brown, and Green. And I was a big fan of Walker and Green when they were doing a Power Man and Iron Fist for Marvel. They just had this great chemistry that he was writing, that Walker was writing. And I was hoping it would be the same here. I remember picking up the first issue to this trade, and it was interesting. It wasn't as great as I expected it to be. It's basically about this family in New York and Harlem in the 1920s who have dealt with possessions and demons for who knows how long. Their family is dying out, and you do have sort of the Power Man and Iron Fist characters. This bigger guy who's always talking with this highfalutin dialogue, and the younger cousin of his who's kind of more Iron Fist. But then you of course get their other, I think, sister, cousin, I don't know, she's like all gun-ho and stuff, and of course this is very racially driven. The whole story is about a black family during the 1920s in Harlem, and of course Walker and Green, and I think I forgot to mention Brown, did I? Chuck Brown. He was a third collaborator in the story. I think that was the problem here. We had too many cooks in the kitchen. Is that what you say? So I'm sure they're trying to get across the point of racism and all this through the story, but then of course you have the whole element of them hunting these Genu and trying to save the world. It all just felt kind of rushed. Green's art is always very cool. You know, he's got this great hip-hop style. I don't know if that's a style, but it was great in Power Man and Iron Fist. It's pretty decent here. There's some panels here and there that felt kind of sketchy. I want to see the end to the story because at the end they give us this cliffhanger where one of the characters ends up in hell and coming back kind of quick, and he's completely changed, and he's like, we can't explain anything because hell is coming, all this exciting post-apocalyptic stuff. So I would like to see the end, and I move on to 2 volumes of Cobra. This is round 2 and round 3. I've read round 2. It picks up right where the round 1 ended. You know, our heroes from Cobra have just saved the world. Tokyo is okay. We've lost people. We're trying to mourn them. And did I say it's by Michael Fife? One thing I will say is that they gave me 2 editions. This newer edition is from Image, and well, they're both from Image, but Image is reusing the old volumes. I'm thinking reusing them. They just put in a sticker on the label and marking them as theirs, and they're not the same trim size. The new ones are a little taller. Sadly, round 1 is actually the same as round 3 here, so this one's gonna kind of stick out for me. It's kind of bothersome, but I don't know. They don't have French flaps. These older editions did have French flaps and stuff, and the paper quality is the same. So I don't know what Image was thinking when they did that. But volume 2 was pretty good. I mean, Fife's art is very unique. He always does these weird panel layouts. I do kind of enjoy when his backgrounds have some kind of weird tubing and stuff. It feels very pop art. Is that what it was called? What's his name? Keith Haring. He does a lot of weird backgrounds with like kind of Keith Haring layouts. I don't know. It's just weird stuff. If you were into Image 90s, and if you liked any of their covert action teams, all the Wildcats, the Wetworks, the Team 7s, which was my favorite, that's pretty much what Cobra is. I think there's like 5 volumes in the series. Yeah, there you go. It's like five volumes in the whole series. I do also like that his characters are some Puerto Ricans and Cubans, I don't know. And it kind of throws me off when I'm trying to read their names and I'm trying to read them in English. Like Ceballos, and like Ceballos. I'm like trying to read it in English and I'm like, how do they even pronounce Ceballos? I was like, but it's a pretty good read. Like I said, it's 90s Image inspired stuff. More. This one's a pretty indie book. This is Yeah by Guilherme Tresca. I think he's a Portuguese or Brazilian creator. I think he's Brazilian. And I believe Yeah was his first graphic novel story comic. This is by Top Shelf. It is a subsidiary of IDW. Is that what Top Shelf is? But I believe this was his first, and it is very much like a storybook. It's sort of an interesting fairy tale. It is a fantasy. It is about war. It is about this young man named Yeah, who all he could say is yeah. So he ends up, he's living in a quiet little town, and something happens to him. He has to go on a journey, a mythical journey, and find himself, and there's a lot of stuff that he goes through. He ends up on a pirate ship trying to find this witch, and then from the pirate ship he goes somewhere else, and he's just trying to make his way to that witch to help him out with the big problem he ended up with in the beginning. The art was nice. The story was pretty good. Who was the translator on this one? I usually never look at the translation until nowadays, but I don't know. I don't see the translator again. But The translation was good. I'm gonna say translation because I don't know now if these are just being published in English for some reason. Last one. This, of course, I was digging through some Amazon España stuff, and of course, when I came across this, I went ahead and threw it in the basket. That is Last Man Stories, and this thing is like a tiny little pocket-sized book. Even the regular Last Man volumes are kind of smaller than what the English publication was, but not this small. And Last Man Stories is basically that. It's a bunch of random stories, or in between stories, that are telling certain aspects of the world that aren't told in the main Last Man. Narrated by this guy, who is a reporter in the main series. But this is actually by a couple other creators. It is by Vives, which is doing the main series, but Basi, I'm not sure who Basi is. I'm guessing he collaborates with them. Maybe he helps them out. And yeah, I mean, in between telling stories of like Tomie and this guy, the cop, I keep forgetting. I think his name is Jay. He just has a one-letter name. You get kind of like their backstories, and within these backstories, there's a subplot of a vigilante kind of superhero that is running around the city of Paxtown, and of course he's basically the Batman kind of guy. They call him the Crow. So he goes out. There he is. He goes out. He inflicts justice upon evildoers, and there's this great scene where he even pulls the Red Lobster line of justice as he's jumping at the bad guys, which is great. So you get that, you know, that subplot within the plot of the short stories. Is that how you would say it? I'm a fan of Last Man. I wanted to check out more. I think volume 11 should be out pretty soon in Spanish. Yeah, that's it. That was my graphic novel haul for these last couple months. Not a lot, bunch of independent stuff no one probably likes, but I do recommend Vampironica, at least for the first 3 issues in the series. The whole story complete is pretty fun. I mean, you got Veronica turning into a vampire, and she tries to take out the dude that turned her, and all at the same time trying to get Archie's attention and so on and so forth. Isn't that what they do in the series? But now I'm just rambling, aren't I? So there you go. Graphic novel haul, trade haul, comics. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.